Hello and welcome to Civics 101. I'm Anthony McLeese. You've heard the story about the frog in the frying pan. If you want to cook a frog and you throw him onto a hot skillet, he'll just jump right off. But if you put him in a pot of lukewarm water and gradually turn up the heat, he'll just sit there until, before he knows it, he's frog soup. In a way, all of us are that frog. Today's Civics 101 topic is global warming. And much like our friend the frog, we're just sitting here in comfort as the environment around us becomes warmer and warmer. When will we be cooked is anyone's guess, but awareness of this important issue is finally catching up with the danger it presents. Take a look at this public service announcement released by the Advertising Council, and you'll understand why time is of the essence.
Tick, tick, massive heat wave. Tick, 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 devastating hurricane. Tick, 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 our future is up to you. Tick.
Joining me now in the Civics 101 studios, United States Representative Albert Wynn, an 8-term congressman from Maryland. Congressman, thank you for joining me on Civics 101.
It's my pleasure.
Great. Now, could you tell us exactly what is global warming?
Well, at the risk of becoming too technical, I'd put it this way. Basically, the sun's heat becomes trapped in our atmosphere as a result of what we call greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, and some others, that basically trap the sun's heat on Earth, causing the planet to warm up. And they can have devastating consequences in terms of climate change, species change, rising sea levels, melting of polar ice caps. All of those are concerns connected to global warming.
Okay, and why are you interested in this area?
I have to tell you, global warming is the single most important issue of our times. Actually, it's particularly of your time and younger generations, because you will see the consequences of this global warming as our planet changes. I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee, and specifically the Energy Subcommittee that deals with this question. And so I am very interested in addressing it from an environmental standpoint. I believe it's the challenge of our generation to address this, to reduce these greenhouse gas emissions, and thereby slow and hopefully reduce the prospect of global warming and, in effect, save the planet.
All right, great. And at the time of this taping, you are planning as an historic hearing coming up pretty soon. Can you tell us about that?
Well, we've had a lot of hearings dealing with global warming, and we're looking at new hearings to deal with a more complex problem of cap and trade. In other words, we're going to actually limit the greenhouse gases that power plants emit, and also the gases that vehicles emit, and also industrial uses emit. And that's going to be a real challenge for our society. It's going to be an economy-wide challenge. We're going to have all segments of society working. We're going to put a limit on emissions, and then we're going to allow companies to trade what we call allowances. Allowances basically are, if I have less emissions than you do, you may want to buy some of my, quote, allowances, because I have a more efficient way of producing energy. And so the cap and trade system is going to be very important. They currently have it in Europe, but it's a way to allow companies to bring down the cost, not the cost, but to bring down their emissions. And it's absolutely essential if we are to limit these greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay, and you're actually planning a hearing on environmental justice. Could you speak about what environmental justice is?
Well, that hearing is coming up this week, as a matter of fact. Environmental justice deals with the fact that African American and other minority communities have a disproportionately high number of toxic facilities, landfills, if you will, dumps, factories that emit toxic gases. All these types of things seem to somehow find their way to minority communities. As a matter of fact, there's been a study that shows that more than housing prices or any other factor, race corresponds to the existence of these toxic facilities. Now, what's significant about that? Well, it results in respiratory diseases, asthma, high levels of cancer. And ironically enough, you find higher levels of these diseases in the African American community, in communities in close proximity to these toxic materials. So environmental justice is our approach to saying, wait a minute, we need to make sure that no community has to take the burden of toxic materials and toxic facilities and plants. And so we're going to have a hearing on that, and we're very excited about that. This is a major issue for the African American and the Latino community, and I think it's going to show that we've got a real problem. We have to mitigate it.
Okay, my other question to you is, you mentioned counties and communities very close to these toxic waste dumps. Can you mention any?
Well, I grew up in a little place called Warren County, North Carolina, and some people say that is actually the home of environmental justice, or the starting point, if you will, for the environmental justice movement. What happened, there was contaminated soil throughout the state of North Carolina, contaminated with a cancer-causing a toxin called PCBs, and the Environmental Protection Agency decided to license a landfill to store this toxic soil. It just happened to be next to a minority community. There was a major protest. Civil rights activists came from around the country and said, wait a minute, why are you putting this in a small community? My grandparents actually lived near this toxic landfill. And the concern was that the landfill would not be able to hold the material. The materials would, as we say, leach out and contaminate the surrounding soil and water. And that's what happened. It took another 10 years to begin to decontaminate the site. But that's when people began to say, wait a minute, why are these facilities being consciously placed in minority communities? So we think this is a big problem that this Congress is going to address.
Okay, great. And you did mention your district. And how important is this issue of global warming to your district? Have they taken steps to help you fight global warming?
Well, absolutely. My district is very environmentally conscious, and many